Well, welcome everybody. It's so exciting to see this group of people, many old friends, many new, in this extraordinary exhibition that we've all been working so hard for in the last several months. So welcome. I'm Ellyn Toscano, for those of you who are new friends. I'm the director of Villa La Pietra and NYU Florence. This exhibition is the culmination of a collection project, an Acton Collection project that was initiated in February called Picturing Women, Constructions of Gender in the Acton Collection and in Contemporary Society. The exhibition takes its inspiration, an exhibition in 2015 entitled Resignifications, curated by Owam Amka. Owam, raise that hand. Which asked artists to consider and respond to the large and problematic collection of blackamoor sculptures in the Acton Collection. 4 of our best examples are in this room. Best in quotation marks. While many institutions are removing from display objects like this, we chose to organize an exhibition in order to develop scholarship and knowledge about who these objects depicted, why they were collected, and ultimately, how do we look at them today in Italy in the context of a historic migration from Africa? While not necessarily viewed as significant works of art, maneuvering them into new contexts did provoke a conversation from which we gained relevant new insights. So, like Resignifications, this exhibition and the larger project of which it was a part asked us to go beyond received categories of art historical analysis, an attempt to understand something about the way women are perceived and depicted in the art of this collection, which you'll see some of. You want to do the lights, you can. In this collection, as in many others, the woman's body is the surface onto which symbolic and historical meanings are carved, and our hope was to create a curiosity within our students about these meanings. The images of women within the Acton Collection are numerous and varied, from a preponderance of religious iconography and fine and decorative arts, to mythological and allegorical depictions, portraiture, and scenes of domesticity. Every room in the collection of some 6,000 objects provides documentation through which to explore the symbolic function of gender roles and relationships across centuries. While we can enjoy the Acton Collection and the level of an aesthetic experience, a display of collecting taste, or an archive of historic art, as active viewers, we become aware of the crucial tension between gender constructions these images represent when created and their meanings and resonance in contemporary and social political contexts. So using the Acton Collection as both a productive and a discursive site, this exhibition examines the depiction of women with a transhistorical perspective, adding into the Villa's collection contemporary responses by artists and poets in an effort to investigate and challenge the received art historical categories of iconography, patronage, material, and function. The planning of this project took place in the late summer and fall of 2016, in the closing months of the presidential election campaign in the United States. The campaign was groundbreaking because it was the first time that a woman was the candidate of one of the 2 major political parties. The project looked hopefully to a revived discussion of women in America in the context of a celebration of the first woman president of the United States. Instead, the series responded to an election which revealed a different America. Instead of celebration of feminism and the shattering of the glass ceiling, the beginning of this project in February coincided with the inauguration of President Trump, elected notwithstanding well-reported misogynistic comments during the elections. It's impossible to avoid this political background, and I encourage all of you to stay for the performance of Karen Finley after the exhibition opens. Her extraordinary work entitled The Genital Election responds directly to this recent history. From February through May of 2017, NYU Florence explored the issues of gender, power, and representation evident in the Acton Collection, and the reverberations of this visual history in contemporary artistic, social, and political contexts. We hosted a series of events, poetry readings, and many of our faculty presented conferences, like a contemporary conference on violence against women. Ultimately, 5 visual artists, Patricia Cronin, Zoe Buckman, Alessandra Capodacqua, Bärbel Reinhard, and Deb Willis, were invited to Florence to study the collection, talk to students about their work, and develop a response to the images in the collection. Each was invited because of her interest in the representation of women, portraiture, and self-portraiture. Most of the artists have experience with the villa, a bit of its history in the collection, and responded in part to a series of normative depictions of women, some grounded in mythology or history. Most of these images are scrolling behind me. We presented a package of these images to each of the artists. The collection of the Acton family, which we retain unchanged in composition and display from the Acton years, does not apparently contain the work of women artists portraying female subjects, though we have hope that a portrait in the collection is the work of Lavinia Fontana, but much more study is required before this is a reliable attribution. This interchange between contemporary artistic voices and the collection calls attention to the ways in which women are portrayed through the mediation of the male artist. In most cases, a mediation that is challenged or simply replaced through the agency of this group of women artists. The biographies of the 5 artists are in the short guide to the exhibition, which I leave you to read there. Also in the guide are the bios of the 5 poets whose work will be read by Elisa Biagini. The 5 poets are Eileen Miles, Alicia Ostriker, Antonella Anede Anjoy, and Cristina Malvasi. We've installed the text of each of the poems next to the object from which the poet took inspiration. In closing, I would just like to thank my own extraordinary staff and the student interns, who I hope are in the room, Isabella, Sandra, and Emma, for their efforts to put this exhibition. In particular, thanks to Elisabetta Clemente and Stefano Pasolini, without whom this couldn't have been. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to hearing next from Deb Willis.
It's really great to be here again. This is a special place for many of us as inspiration. And I just wanted to say that my project focused on Hortense and Hortense Acton, and the idea of going through her closet and just to think about identities and to think about how we reimagine ourselves through our clothing, how we would like to be seen, and how we imagine we are within a time frame. So Acton, Hortense lived in the villa for, I'm not sure how many years, but through the 20s, her clothes shaped her identity. So I think that as we all are interested in how stories are reframed through our clothes, I wanted to explore fashion. I wanted to explore the idea of consumer. I wanted to also think about beauty as a fraught sense of ways of women as they think about intimate spaces. We see our shoes. We see also that as she's thinking about the idea of her femininity, about her sense of being desired by a husband that might not desire her, but probably feels a way, but through her leather, her gold shoes, the specialness of fabric, the thinking of how her bathroom has a sense of reflection, with the gold shoes, with the brush, with the nail file, but also with lace, and how lace and light walks through and works through her space. Thinking about shoes and fabric, and thinking about identities through gold and through stones. Just wanted to play with the idea of Hortense, who lived in Chicago, who moved here and basically bought the villa to assist with her husband, who was an artist and art dealer in 1903. That we also know that in terms of looking at the personal possessions of this wonderful woman who decided to find an identity and reimagine herself through her clothing. So with the project, I photographed a number of pieces. We placed the pieces throughout the villa. Wanted to reimagine her dancing, framing herself in front of a mirror, but also within the ballroom. And just the items, some of them were unpacked recently, and we can see the bead. We talked downstairs about the beadwork. We also talked about that they seem to be three-dimensional. We also shared the idea that they could be paintings reflecting on photographs. So there's a different way of framing the work, and I was really appreciative to have an opportunity to show my work, which I rarely show, so I thank Ellyn Toscano. and the support of the villa. It's really important. And I want to thank all of you who are here tonight. The idea of pulling us all together to talk about women and migration was central to all of you who are here, and we will all have our voices tomorrow, but I really thank you all for taking the time to come and attending the opening. Thank you.
Good evening. As Walt Whitman wrote, I contain multitudes. This is the case for me tonight, because my name is Elisa Biagini, and I will read the poem I wrote in dialogue with an artwork in the collection, but will also read the poems of the other poets that Ellyn mentioned, who also had a look at this very interesting collection and picked, and they were very, provoking in their interpretation. Their statement and bios you can find in the booklet as well, so I will just read the poems. This very nice rabbit, it's a she-rabbit, just let's clarify. It really inspired Eileen Miles when she was here. This is the poem she wrote that you can also find downstairs. White rabbit. And another thing, I don't like the way you walk. My body is a black dream, or think of it as left. You crinkle, what's left of me. You cook my little porcelain rabbit. I always go to parties to meet the ladies. Turkish means meets the ladies a lot. Turkish means porcelain rabbit. I'm kidding you, of course. I will not bite your heart. I will bite your life into.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alessandra Capodacqua, and I've been very, very happy to work with this collection of works here. I've been looking at the works of the villa with a special eye, the eye of my camera, which is a pinhole camera. So my camera is a very simple tool, and I have decided to transform my relationship with the villa into this kind of being there and not there. As Deb already said, we were also inspired by the presence of Hortense. Hortense is a very strong woman. I had the pleasure and the honor to study the archive, the photographic archive, and so I got very much into a connection with her. And so all the pictures that I have taken are sort of like me dialoguing with her, and also with the pieces of art. So you see that my presence is not a real presence. I'm kind of a ghost. And this is part of my entire body of work. I've been working on these themes for over 25 years. And as I say, I like to state my presence through my absence in these photographs. So you can see me, and sometimes you have to look for me. And this is the way I perceived also the presence of Hortense, like being a woman lost in the beauty of this amazing villa. And this is what I try to transform, her being in the villa, trying to even understand the value of these beautiful pieces, and trying to be very delicate with the works. And so in this picture, for instance, which I think is the last one, is I like the idea of being a reflection of myself, but also a reflection of Hortense. So I welcome you looking at the works that is kind of disguised in the villa. You won't find a clear reference, like where the picture was taken is never where the picture is displayed, because I think it's important that we try to reconstruct the presence of Hortense and myself. So thank you.
Christine Malvasi, Cassandra in the Room of Mirrors. I cannot speak for Cassandra because I cannot avoid myself. In the next room over, prudence reminds me to know myself. But the woman staring in the mirror also means vanity. The statue, yet another female form, lending concreteness to a concept, from prudence to vanity, liberty to entire continents. She, slate, bare chest, onto which to project, because in history we are the real women. The violence of being transformed into symbol, because symbols do not speak. I cannot speak for Cassandra. Allegory of fated sight, icon of tragedy, trope of the unheard, tangled knot of myth she didn't make. Someone once said a woman is always accompanied by her own image of herself, aware of being viewed. Even her own eyes float out of the body to monitor her as others monitor. She weeps and watches herself weep. What it is like to be embodied. Let my form be my form, my eyes hold in their position to look at everything except myself, to be tangible, limited in time and space. Here are my glories, my mistakes, not prudence or vanity, but my own fleshy mix of contradiction.
All right. Thank you, Deb, and Ellyn, for organizing this. It's just incredible already. We're off to such a great start. Okay, so Harriet Hosmer's Ghosts in the Villa La Pietra. The images of women in the Acton Collection depict the tradition of men instructing women how they should behave. American neoclassical sculptor Harriet Hosmer would have had none of that. She moved to Rome in 1852 when she was 22 years old, when women weren't allowed to be in public without a familial male chaperone. She apprenticed with the leading neoclassical sculptor, British artist John Gibson, and very quickly hung out her own shingle and became known as the first professional female sculptor. She lived within a lively Anglo-American expatriate community in Rome and Florence of artists and writers, as well as a circle of what they called then independent women. She was infamous. She had a prominent career, was critically acclaimed, financially successful, exhibited in all the international exhibitions, and today her works are in some of the best museum collections in the world. And yet she's largely unknown. While researching and writing and illustrating her catalog raisonné, the most important scholarly volume an artist can have in their career, I couldn't locate some very important lost sculptures, including one the London Art Journal called Hosmer's Crowning Achievement, her masterpiece, life-size marble statue of the last Queen of Naples. Although there are contradictory written descriptions, there is no visual documentation of this Queen of Naples. The question was how to visually represent something I could not see, something that was lost. So tracing Hosmer's footsteps in Rome for a year, surrounded by Catholicism, majestic churches, mysticism, stories of miracles and saints' lives, it helped me answer the question, how to do this. And it was an apparition, a phantom for missing statues and a lost history. So the large-scale fabric ghosts installed throughout the villa confront the representations of women in the Acton Collection and the prevalent patriarchal culture of containment with regards to women. Hosmer's ghosts represent the hidden and lost histories of women who dared to define their own lives and gives presence to their absence.
I'm particularly happy to read the next two poems. The first one is by Alicia Stryker. She's a dear friend. I was very happy to be able to invite her, and she was my mentor when I was studying in the United States. And the other one is by Antonella Nedda, who's, I believe, but not only myself, is the best voice in contemporary Italian poetry. It's absolutely wonderful. Alicia Stryker. St. Catherine of Siena kneels on a cloud. She's clothed in white and covered up and down. Her downcast eyes are humble. She's praying. He's buff, shirtless, his muscles left arm loosened from the cross, while his right arm embraces her, like a refrain from the Song of Solomon. And what will happen next? Will the rapt saint be happily enwrapped behind what looks like a red bed curtain? Giovanni lives through the imagination of viewers like us. Antonella Nedda, poem is entitled. I read the Italian first. Ho esitato a lungo tra lei, la santa, saio nero, soggolo, assenza di sorriso, e le dame cinesi sparse dentro un unico vuoto, senza lo sguardo di un uomo occidentale, prive di prospettiva, api d'oro che ronzano nell'aria. Infine ho scelto lei, scolastica. How do I that? Because we're still looking at the first image. Sorry. Ecco qua. All right. Infine ho scelto lei, scolastica, per amore del nome che suggerisce aule, lavagne, un'esatta dizione perché il suo corpo smisurato che si staglia sul prato e più di tutto per il rosso del libro e non del cuore, spalancato. Now the translation by Brenda Porster. I hesitated a long time between her, the saint, black habit, wimple, the absent smile, and the Chinese ladies scattered inside a single empty space, lacking prospects unless in the eye of a Western man, golden bees buzzing in air. In the end, I chose her, Scholastica, for love of the name, reminiscent of classrooms, blackboards, clear elocution, for that immense body silhouetted against the meadow, and most of all, for the red of the book and not of the heart, wide open.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here and that I had the opportunity to work in this amazing collection. So the first time that I came here to see the collection about some years ago, I was like really overwhelmed. And when I have been asked to work with this collection, for me it was almost right from the beginning clear that I want to work in collage. So this work is, the name of the work is Egress. I started it by doing collages, like really classical paper cutout collages. So I was photographing millions, not millions, but thousands of bodies and elements of bodies, and also attributes of women here present in the collection. And then later on, I was like just cutting them out by extrapolating from their original context and bringing them to a new context, combining them together in like small shrines. From this kind of procedure, then I arrived to do something that is could seem completely the opposite, and in effect it is completely the opposite. Still, by taking images of paintings here, most of them are in the upper floor, so they are not underneath because my work is displayed in the library. I was like painting over digitally over the painting to leave just these traces of bodies, also by having them somehow deprived of their identity, so that everybody could somehow imagine the narrative that is underlying under this black paint. Also, this becomes somehow a kind of projections to imagine how the identity of these women is in the collection. And somehow I was like really amazed when I saw the work of Deb Willis, and somehow how closely it is connected, not only by the black canvas, but also by the idea of having traces of female presences inside here, and somehow how much more eloquent is the absent. Thank you.
So, last poem, my own poem. I'm also an art historian, so for me it was particularly fun, actually interesting and fun to think about which artwork to pick, and I ended up with these two ladies. Actually, I work with one, because also what happened is that during one of the talks, I was given by Francesca, we were given a copy of this postcard that Hortense wrote about the Sphinx of Giza, and she wrote, "We saw nothing but head above the smooth sands. I prefer it that way, but they're discovering things constantly all about him." I say, what him? She, not him. So, Italian first. Avvicinati allo specchio dello scrivere, mordere terra, mangiare ombra. Siamo in pasto di polvere e sonno, quattro zampe che tornano dove non si è mai stati, una lingua che ricorda cosa non è successo. Folta coda del tempo, traccia, la nostra, che si cancella nell'andare. Come closer to the mirror of writing, biting soil, eating shadow. We are a mixture of dust and sleep, four paws going back to where they have never been, a tongue remembering what never happened. Thick tail of time, a trace, ours, that erases itself in the going.
Bathroom? Okay, so try to see it as we, before we leave. Unfortunately, Zoe was unable to attend, but she wrote a note, said her body of work, and just thinking about, it's entitled Every Curve. It's fascinating for me because when I was going through the collection, I asked, where's the underwear? You know, where's Hortense's underwear? Where's her intimate wear? Because the clothes were so sensitive and sensual, the fabrics were just fascinating, just imagining her in the clothes, but I also wanted to know how she explored her own sensuality within her underwear. But looking at Zoe's work, we invited her because she's looking at the idea of influences between feminism and hip-hop culture, between the idea of lingerie and vintage lingerie, but also framing the language of being objectified but also being desired. So she's complicating the language. When we were deciding on the works, she said, well, can I use the N word? I'm like, no. She said, can I use the C word? I'm like, no. You can't have it here. You can put it in your other installations. Because I felt that we wanted to think about the experience, and she was working with me in it and with Ellyn. We thought about the idea of how women embroider, use embroidery with their work, but also how we embrace hip-hop. We embrace the language of hip-hop. We love the stories that are a part of the hip-hop framework, but also between the time that she began listening to hip-hop between Tupac and Biggie, she was living in London, and she felt that the music just carried her through parts of her life. It framed her until she had a child, and then she said she started thinking about music and singing lullabies to her children and her daughter, and she started really reciting hip-hop and really reciting some of the language that she found offensive to women. She said, I can't really sing these songs to my daughter, but I want us to look at the language and look at about how are we desired through hip-hop language, but also how do we think about violence of women, but how do we also empower ourselves and be provoked in the wonderful ways of wearing stockings, the way that we like our bodies to feel with silk. So all of the things that we are combining, the battle as women being desired, but also being empathetic and sympathetic as feminists. So it's a complicated experience. But we think about being complicated as being accepted with Hortense. So these are some of the works that are in the collection. They are provocative. The way the legs are crossed, you read the words on the leg. We see the gap in terms of the open legs, so there's a sense of desire when we're looking at the pieces. But we also see framing the body and how the body is framed within the language of hip-hop, between the language of desire, but also going through the antique stores to collect the underwear. So this is what our work is about, and the way it's installed, it really embraces the history of what she's trying to do within the work. Thank you.
Thank you all. So we're going to have a little refreshment on the way to Limonaya to see Karen Finley's performance. Thank you all for coming.